Ethan Carter's alarm buzzed at 6 a.m., shattering the fragile quiet of the small apartment. He groaned and rubbed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion settle over his shoulders. Being a single dad wasn't easy, and mornings were the hardest. Lucas, his 6-year-old son, was already awake, bouncing on the edge of the bed with the energy of someone who didn't understand deadlines, responsibilities, or the endless pressure of keeping a family afloat alone. "Dad, can we have pancakes today?" Lucas asked, his small voice bright and hopeful. Ethan forced a tired smile. "Sure, buddy. But first, we need to get ready. We're running late." He grabbed Lucas's clothes from the dresser, brushing a hand over his son's hair with practiced patience. Breakfast was a hurried affair. Toast for Lucas, a cup of instant coffee for Ethan, both eaten standing at the small kitchen counter. Every bite seemed a taste of stress. Every sip of caffeine a reminder that he was fighting a battle he didn't ask for, but couldn't avoid. Ethan glanced at the clock. 7:20 a.m. His office building was 30 minutes away, but traffic could stretch the commute to 45. He hated being late. Always had. He straightened his tie, slung Lucas's backpack over his shoulder, and they hurried to the car. The streets were already bustling. Cars honked impatiently, and pedestrians moved with purpose. Ethan navigated cautiously, keeping an eye on Lucas in the back seat as he buckled himself in. He was halfway to the office when he noticed a woman struggling on the corner, pregnant, clearly in her third trimester, trying to lift several heavy grocery bags. One of them ripped, spilling produce across the sidewalk. Without thinking, Ethan pulled over. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping out. The woman looked up, startled but grateful. "Oh, yes. Thank you. I didn't want to ask anyone for help, but here," Ethan said, gathering the bags. Lucas leaned out the window, curiosity written all over his face. "We'll get these inside for you." The woman smiled, a flash of warmth that made Ethan forget for a moment the ticking clock and the looming threat of being late. "I'm Claire Whitman. Really, thank you. It's been a long morning." "It's nothing," Ethan said, brushing it off. But Lucas tugged on his sleeve, whispering, "Dad, hurry, or you'll be late for work." Ethan hesitated, glancing at the office building in the distance. Every instinct told him to drive away, to ignore this small act of kindness. But the sight of Claire struggling with a particularly heavy bag made his decision easy. Sometimes doing the right thing required sacrificing punctuality. By the time the groceries were inside and Claire safely settled on her porch, Ethan's watch read 7:50 a.m., 10 minutes behind schedule. Lucas frowned. "Well, we're going to get in trouble." Ethan sighed, guilt gnawing at him. "I know, buddy. I know." He drove the remaining distance in a quiet tension, the city streets blurring past. The office loomed ahead, its glass doors reflecting the early morning sun. Ethan parked, grabbed his briefcase, and strode toward the elevator, trying to appear composed. The HR office was already buzzing when he arrived. His boss, Richard Callahan, stood by the desk, arms crossed, brow furrowed. "Ethan, we need to talk," Richard said, his tone cold and clipped. "This is the third time this month you've been late." Ethan swallowed, nodding. "I understand, sir." "No excuses," Richard interrupted. "We have rules here. Punctuality is non-negotiable. I'm afraid we have to let you go." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Ethan's mouth went dry. "Fired?" he asked, barely audible. I just..." Richard shook his head. "We can't make exceptions, Ethan. I am sorry." Lucas, who had followed him into the office for the first time, looked up at his father with wide eyes. Ethan knelt to meet his gaze. "It's okay, buddy. It's not your fault." But it was his fault, or at least he felt it was. He had always wanted to be the kind of father who never failed, who provided without compromise. And now he had failed, not because of laziness, but because he had chosen compassion over clockwork. Walking back to the car, Ethan's mind raced. How would he pay the bills? How would he explain this to Lucas? Each worry piled on top of the next, heavy and relentless. And yet, beneath the anxiety, there was a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had done the right thing, even if the world punished him for it. Lucas reached up, holding Ethan's hand. "Dad, we'll be okay, right?" Ethan looked down at his son, at the small face filled with trust and hope. He forced a reassuring smile. Yeah, buddy, we'll figure it out. Always. As they drove home, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this morning, this small choice, had changed something. Something big. He didn't yet know how or why, but the sense of possibility lingered, stubborn and unyielding. And somewhere, miles away, Claire Whitman watched from her porch, a thought forming that would soon alter both their lives in ways Ethan could never imagine. Ethan sat on the edge of his worn sofa, Lucas curled up beside him, both of them enveloped in the quiet hum of their small apartment. The weight of the morning still pressed heavily on Ethan's shoulders. He had lost his job, not because of laziness or incompetence, but because he had chosen compassion over punctuality. The irony was cruel, and the thought of explaining it to Lucas twisted his gut. "Dad, do you think we'll have to move?" Lucas asked softly, his voice tinged with worry that no child should ever have to feel. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat and tried to summon courage. "No, Boothie, we'll figure it out. We always do." Lucas nodded, but Ethan could see the worry lingering in his eyes. It was moments like these that reminded him why he worked so hard, why he pushed himself beyond exhaustion. Lucas depended on him, and he would never let him down, even if the world seemed determined to make that impossible. Later that afternoon, Ethan found himself walking to the nearby park with Lucas, trying to clear his mind. He replayed the morning in his head, the spilled groceries, the frantic crossing, the pregnant woman struggling under the weight of her bags. He had acted without thinking, instinct guiding him, and now he was paying the price. But something about that encounter lingered in his thoughts. The woman, Claire Whitman, had a presence that stayed with you, quiet, composed, and warm. She had thanked him sincerely, her eyes reflecting genuine gratitude. Ethan couldn't help but wonder about her life, her world. She had been so calm, so assured, despite the chaos she faced. It was a stark contrast to the constant struggle he carried, balancing deadlines, bills, and the unrelenting demands of single parenthood. The next day, as Ethan scoured job listings on his laptop, a message appeared in his inbox. He frowned, confused. It was from an unknown email address, subject line, "A small thank you from yesterday." Curiosity piqued. He opened it.mr. "Carter, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to personally thank you for your kindness yesterday. It's rare to encounter someone willing to stop and help without hesitation. If you are available, I would like to invite you to lunch this week. There's something important I'd like to discuss." Claire Whitman. Ethan stared at the screen, disbelief and suspicion mingling in his chest. Why would a stranger, a woman he barely knew, want to have lunch with him? And what could be so important that it required this sudden invitation? Lucas, perched on a chair of the juice box, looked up. "Dad, who's it from?" "Just someone I helped yesterday," Ethan said, his tone careful, trying not to let hope creep in too strongly. "She wants to thank me." Lucas grinned. "Cool. You're famous." Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. He knew this wasn't fame. It was something else. Something he couldn't yet define. That'd be why the time they arrived at the small cafe Claire suggested, Ethan was tense. He fidgeted with his tie, trying to appear calm, while Lucas sat politely beside him, a mixture of curiosity and excitement in his eyes. When Claire appeared, Ethan nearly stopped breathing. She was radiant, but in an understated way. Not the kind of brightness that demanded attention, but one that drew it naturally. "Ethan, thank you for coming," she said warmly, gesturing to the seat across from her. "It's my pleasure," he replied, trying to keep his nerves in check. "You didn't have to invite me. I insisted," Claire said, her smile gentle. "Kindness should be recognized." She paused, leaning slightly forward. "But there's more I want to share with you." Ethan nodded, curiosity prickling at the edges of his focus. As they talked, the conversation began casually, about Lucas, about morning routines, about the small challenges of daily life. Ethan found himself relaxing, drawn into Claire's calm presence. There was something unusual about her, an ease, a confidence, a subtle strength that made his own worries feel lighter. Then, she spoke the words that would shift everything. Ethan, I need to tell you, I own the company you work for. Ethan blinked, the words catching in his throat. Wait, what? Claire smiled, but it was gentle, unassuming. I didn't want to reveal it at first. It's complicated, but I wanted you to know the truth. You helped me yesterday, and I never forget acts of genuine kindness. Ethan's mind raced. She owned his office? The woman he had thought of as a stranger, someone he had helped on impulse, was the person with the power to affect countless lives, including his own. And yet, she hadn't used her position to intimidate or manipulate him. She had simply smiled, offered thanks, and extended a hand of genuine connection. I don't know what to say, Ethan admitted. I'm a single dad. I was late for work because I helped you. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't expect. Claire's eyes softened. It mattered to me, and I think it matters to the world more than you realize. Integrity like yours, it's rare. I'd like to help you, Ethan. Not because I can, but because you earned it. Ethan stared at her, a mixture of disbelief and gratitude filling him. He had spent so long trying to survive, to provide for Lucas, that he had almost forgotten what it felt like to be recognized, not for wealth or achievement or ambition, but for simply being a good person. Lucas tugged at his sleeve. Dad, she's nice. Ethan smiled down at him, a warmth spreading through his chest. Yeah, buddy, she really is. By the end of lunch, Ethan felt a strange sense of possibility that he hadn't felt in months. For the first time since losing his job, he allowed himself to hope. Claire's presence, her acknowledgement, suggested a future that might be different, better, brighter, more secure. He didn't yet understand how or why, but the feeling of opportunity was irresistible as they parted ways. Claire placed a hand lightly on his arm. We'll talk again soon. There's more I want you to see about the company and about life. Ethan nodded, still reeling. As he walked back to the car with Lucas, he felt the stirrings of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility, not just for himself, but for the family he cherished. And though he didn't yet know the path ahead, he sensed that this encounter, this simple act of helping someone, was only the beginning of a story that could change everything. Ethan woke early the next morning, a restless energy keeping him from the deep sleep he usually cherished. His mind replayed the lunch with Claire, the way her calm voice had reassured him, the subtle warmth in her eyes, and the incredible revelation that she was the owner of the company he had just lost. It was surreal, like stepping into a story he hadn't expected to be part of. Lucas, still groggy from sleep, tugged at Ethan's sleeve. Dad, can we go play later? Ethan smiled, ruffling his son's hair. Of course, buddy. But first, we've got some grown-up things to figure out. The phone rang, cutting through the quiet. It was an unfamiliar number. Ethan hesitated, but answered. Ethan Carter? Claire's voice came through, calm and composed. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I'd like to discuss something important. Are you available to come by the office today? Ethan felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Yes, I can come in. The office building felt different when he returned. Not oppressive, not threatening, but alive with a sense of potential. Claire's assistant greeted him warmly, leading him to a conference room he had never entered. Sunlight spilled through the large windows, illuminating the polished surfaces and minimalist decor. Claire entered shortly after, her presence commanding yet unassuming. Ethan, thank you for coming, she said, motioning to the seat across from her. I wanted to offer you a position here, not just a job, but a role where your abilities and integrity will be valued. Ethan blinked. You want to hire me? After I was late and got fired. Claire's expression remained steady. Yes, your dedication and character don't go unnoticed. I want someone who sees more than just the rules, someone who acts with empathy and judgment. That person is you. The words should have made him elated, but Ethan's mind was clouded with doubt. I don't know. I don't want anyone to think I'm here because of special treatment. You're not, Claire replied. You're here because you earned it, and I respect that about you. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. It felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Finally, he would have the chance to provide stability for Lucas, without sacrificing the principles he held dear. Days passed. Ethan settled into his new role, yet the environment brought its own challenges. Colleagues whispered, some casting sideways glances, others openly questioning how a man recently fired could now hold responsibility in the company. Office politics, Ethan realized, were a subtle battlefield, and he had to navigate it carefully. Claire, meanwhile, maintained a professional distance, never treating him as less capable or undeserving. Yet, there were moments, a shared glance over a meeting report, a smile when he handled a difficult situation with grace, that hinted at a connection deeper than professional courtesy. Ethan felt both encouraged and conflicted. One afternoon, as he walked through the office corridors, Ethan's thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. Ethan. He turned to see Sophia Blake, his ex-girlfriend from years ago, standing by the elevator. Her appearance was unexpected, and for a moment, Ethan froze. Memories of their time together, some tender, some complicated, flickered through his mind. Sophia smiled faintly, casual but pointed. "I heard her back here," she said. "Congratulations." "I guess." Ethan forced a polite smile. "Thanks, Sophia. It's been a lot." She tilted her head, studying him. "Still juggling everything? Single-parent life suits you, I suppose." The words struck a chord, bringing back insecurities Ethan had thought buried. He had spent years trying to honor the memory of Lucas's mother, never allowing himself to imagine a new life. Yet here he was, navigating feelings he hadn't expected. Later, as Ethan sat at his desk reviewing reports, he found his mind wandering to Claire again. The way she carried herself, the subtle encouragement she offered, and the unwavering respect she showed. It was unlike anything he had experienced. And yet, he worried about boundaries, about appearances. The office buzzed with curiosity, and he didn't want to be misunderstood or judged for feelings he barely allowed himself to acknowledge. Even Lucas noticed the change in his father. "Dad, you're smiling a lot these days," he said one evening, climbing onto Ethan's lap. Ethan hugged him close, masking the mixture of excitement and fear. "Yeah, buddy, things are looking up." As the weeks passed, Ethan found himself drawn deeper into the rhythm of the company. He excelled in his new responsibilities, gaining the respect of those who had doubted him. But alongside professional growth, an emotional current was rising. Lunches with Claire became longer, conversations more personal. He discovered her love for classical music, her passion for charitable work, and her gentle humor. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to hope that life could offer more than mere survival. It could offer connection, trust, and perhaps love, yet tension simmered beneath the surface. Office gossip, Sophia's occasional visits, and the silent judgments of colleagues reminded him that navigating human relationships was rarely straightforward. Every smile from Claire, every moment of shared understanding, carried weight, fraught with unspoken implications. Ethan was acutely aware that his decisions now could ripple across his professional life and his personal world, affecting not just himself, but Lucas as well. One evening, as he left the office, Claire caught up with him in the lobby. "Ethan, I want you to know I value everything you bring here. Your perspective, your integrity, it makes a difference." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't experienced in years. "Thank you, Claire. That means more than I can say." She paused, her gaze steady. "There's more to this company than what meets the eye, and I want you to see it. Not because I have to, but because I want you to understand what you're part of." Ethan nodded, sensing both excitement and caution. This was the turning point, the threshold where his personal and professional lives intersected, where choices carried not just consequence, but possibility. He didn't yet know what lay ahead, but the path was opening, and with it, a chance to discover more than stability. Perhaps even love. As he stepped outside, the city lights glinting against the evening sky, Ethan felt the first flicker of hope he had allowed himself in months. The future was uncertain, but it was alive, full of potential, and waiting for him to take the next step. Ethan arrived at the office early that morning, the sunlight glinting off the polished windows and reflecting a new sense of purpose he hadn't felt in months. Lucas waved goodbye from the doorway, backpack slung over his shoulder, his small grin full of confidence that his dad could handle whatever came next. Ethan returned the smile, feeling a warmth in his chest that carried him through the building doors. Today felt different. Today felt like a turning point. Claire was already at her desk when he arrived, reviewing reports with her usual calm efficiency. She looked up as he approached, and for a moment, her expression softened, a subtle gesture that only Ethan seemed to notice. "Good morning, Ethan," she said. "I've been looking forward to discussing something with you today." Ethan nodded, careful to mask the flutter of anticipation in his chest. "Good morning, Claire. I'm ready." She led him to a quiet meeting room, the space bathed in soft morning light. "Ethan, over the past few weeks, I've watched you navigate challenges here that would overwhelm many," Claire began. "You've shown integrity, dedication, and thoughtfulness. Not only that, you've inspired the team without even trying." Ethan swallowed, feeling both pride and the familiar anxiety of self-doubt. I'm just doing my best." Claire smiled, a subtle warmth in her eyes. "And that's exactly why I want you to lead a new project, one that could define the company's direction for the next year. I believe in your judgment and your ability to balance responsibility with care." Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a vote of confidence, a symbol of trust that went beyond professional skills. It was personal recognition of who he was at his core. I won't let you down," he said, voice firm, though a hint of vulnerability lingered. "I know," Claire said, standing to shake his hand. Her touch was brief, but lingered in his mind, stirring feelings he had carefully guarded for years. As Ethan settled into his new role, the office environment shifted subtly. Colleagues who had whispered and speculated now watched with quiet respect, recognizing the skill and integrity he brought to the table. Yet alongside professional respect, a deeper bond was growing between Ethan and Claire. Shared lunches evolved into thoughtful conversations about life, values, and dreams. Ethan discovered a side of Claire that few ever saw: her quiet humor, her love of music, her commitment to her family and friends. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings and project planning, Claire asked Ethan to join her for dinner. "Nothing formal," she said. "I just thought we could talk about the project and life in general." Ethan felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He had spent years avoiding emotional attachments, believing that his focus needed to remain entirely on Lucas. But something about Claire's presence felt different, safe, understanding, and genuine. He agreed. The dinner was held in a quiet, elegant restaurant, the kind that encouraged conversation rather than distraction. Ethan found himself opening up, sharing his struggles as a single dad, the sacrifices he had made, and the fears he carried for Lucas's future. Claire listened, her attention unwavering, responding with empathy and insight rather than judgment. "You're remarkable, Ethan," Claire said softly, her eyes meeting his. "Not because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you are. The way you care, the choices you make, it matters." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of being truly seen for the first time in years. I've spent so long trying to just survive," he admitted. "I didn't realize I could feel hope again." Claire reached across the table, lightly brushing her hand against his. "Hope is meant to be shared," she said. "And sometimes, life rewards those who act with courage, even when the world seems unfair." The conversation shifted to the project, the company's future, and the exciting opportunities ahead. But underneath it all, an unspoken understanding grew, a connection that balanced respect, admiration, and the faint beginnings of affection. Ethan recognized it, and though he tread carefully, he welcomed in the weeks that followed. Ethan excelled. The project he led became a beacon of his dedication and talent, earning accolades from colleagues and board members alike. Claire remained a constant presence, not in a way that overshadowed him, but in a way that supported and encouraged. She offered guidance, shared insights, and celebrated his successes, reinforcing the trust that had been quietly building between them. Back at home, Lucas noticed the change in his father. "Dad, you look happy," he said one evening as they prepared dinner together. Ethan smiled, ruffling Lucas's hair. "I am, buddy. Things are looking brighter." Lucas grinned, tugging at Ethan's hand. "And you got a new friend, right?" Ethan paused, thinking of Claire, of her warmth, her kindness, and the way she had transformed not just his career, but his sense of possibility. "Yeah," he said finally, a quiet certainty in his voice. "Edo." One afternoon, as the project reached a critical milestone, Claire pulled Ethan aside. "I want you to know," she said, her tone soft but firm, "that everything you've achieved here, it's because of you. Not me, not anyone else. You've earned this. And you've earned a place in my life, too, if you're willing to accept it." Ethan felt his heart lift, a mixture of disbelief and gratitude swirling within him. "Claire, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep being yourself," she replied with a gentle smile. "Because that's exactly who I want you to be." As he walked back to his office, Ethan thought of Lucas, of their struggles, of the long nights and uncertain mornings. And he realized something profound. Sometimes, a single act of kindness, a decision made without thought of reward, could change the course of life in ways you never imagined. His world, once shadowed by doubt and fear, now glimmered with possibility, love, stability, and hope for the future. That evening, Ethan returned home to find Lucas waiting by the window, his small face lit by the golden glow of sunset. "Dad, you're smiling again," Lucas said, his voice full of awe. Ethan scooped him into his arms, holding him close. "Yeah, buddy, things are going to be okay. Better than okay. They're going to be wonderful." And for the first time in a long while, Ethan allowed himself to believe it.